We have some really important news this morning, folks. The Trump administration is set to overhaul the criminal division in the IRS to go after large Democratic donors and Democratic leaning organizations. Now, this is pretty big news for a myriad of reasons. First, once again, the administration is planning to target its political opponents, this time through tax related offenses. Second, just back in 2019, Donald Trump, then president during his first term, said, quote, "I will never allow the IRS to be used as a political weapon." And that leads me to my third point, which is the IRS has been a very big boogeyman for Republicans for a very long time. The last thing Republicans have ever wanted is expanding the IRS. In fact, one of their biggest fears for a long time, especially more conservative leaning Republicans in Congress, has been the IRS being weaponized by a Democratic administration to go after religious nonprofits and even to go after conservatives, right? The last thing they want is more taxes. They don't like taxes and they don't like the IRS probing into nonprofit statuses. They don't like the IRS probing into their personal finances. And so for a long time, the IRS has been this boogeyman that Republicans have been using to try to downsize the federal government. Remember when President Biden allegedly hired tens of thousands of new IRS agents and the outcry that resulted from that legislation passed by Congress then during Biden's term? Well, there isn't similar outrage today, despite the fact that Trump isn't hiring new IRS agents. He's merely reshuffling the IRS as a whole to place more emphasis on the criminal division to go after his political opponents, to go after Democratic donors like George Soros, for example, to go after left-leaning nonprofit organizations. And well, here's the thing. I will just say this. Be careful what you wish for. I'm no advocate of using the IRS to go after Republicans or Democrats. But Democratic politicians who get elected inevitably in 2026, 2028, or beyond may turn around and now use the IRS to go after nonprofit statuses of churches, for example, and try to remove the exemption from religious institutions. That's something that's been on the table. If the IRS is probing left-leaning donors, it will then probe right-leaning donors under a Democratic administration in 2028 or 2032, whenever there's a Democrat in office. And well, I guarantee you that a lot of Republicans are actually pretty concerned this morning over this overhaul. They're just not going to speak out about it because that would mean speaking out against the president of the United States. And for his part, he himself, remember back in 2019, said that he would never allow the IRS to be used as a political weapon. And yet here we are. Now, in addition, overnight, actually, I was able to break this exclusive with the Midas Touch Network on their channel. California Governor Gavin Newsom is now condemning a Trump administration plan to fire live missiles over Interstate 5 as part of a Navy sea-to-shore anniversary event near Camp Pendleton, a military base in Southern California. Newsom called it a, quote, absurd show of force and totally uncalled for. So there's a White House event being planned. And before I continue, please consider subscribing to support my work for more exclusive content or sending a one-time donation via Venmo to Aaron-Parnas. So there is a White House plan for an event this Friday, tomorrow, and Saturday in Southern California for the Marine Corps' 250th birthday, or the Marine Corps' birthday. And Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to lead some type of parade during this event. And as part of this event, Governor Newsom's office, this is according to sources that spoke to me directly, as part of this event, Governor Newsom's office received reports that the Trump White House may be conducting live-fire military drills, shooting missiles from Navy ships off the coast of Southern California over Interstate 5 into Camp Pendleton. Now, things like these, military trainings like these happen often, right? So this isn't necessarily anything new. But what is new is that the purpose of this live fire drill, according to reports and sources, is to conduct a show of force the same weekend as No King's Day. The purpose of it is to show Southern California residents that the military is still there. And as a result, according to Governor Newsom's office, there may be closures, essentially, potentially, along I-5, which is one of the busiest interstates in Southern California. So as I get more information about this, I will let you know. Both Brown University and MIT have rejected a Trump administration offer that would grant expanded federal funding in exchange for sweeping ideological changes to university policies. So the Trump administration has sought to ban consideration of sex and ethnicity in admissions, capping international enrollment, and policing faculty viewpoints. There was a proposed compact sent to 9 universities. 2 of them have said no. Brown University and MIT have rejected this proposal. Donald Trump also threatened to deploy federal troops to San Francisco, saying that the city is plagued with violent crime, using very much of the same rhetoric that he's used for Chicago, for D.C., for Portland. Local officials have rebuked this, said we don't need essentially military personnel on the ground in San Francisco. We will see if the Trump administration follows suit there. Lara Trump, the president's daughter-in-law, volunteered to perform at Turning Point USA's planned conservative alternative to the Super Bowl halftime show. A melting ice sculpture spelling the word democracy was installed in front of the U.S. Capitol as a symbolic protest highlighting the fragility of democratic institutions. You literally saw democracy in ice, and then it literally melted right in front of the Capitol. A new Guardian-Harris poll found that 75% of Americans say their household costs have risen by at least $100 a month, despite Trump's claims that inflation is actually over, with most blaming tariffs and government policies for continued price hikes. Over half of respondents believe the economy is in a recession, and while confidence in both parties has dropped, Democratic economic proposals such as banning food price gouging and expanding the child tax credit remain more popular than Trump's agenda for tax cuts, tariffs, and mass deportations. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has rejected the Trump administration's claim that cartels have placed bounties over U.S. immigration officials, saying that her government has no information on such threats. Security experts, including former DEA officials and a former cartel trafficker, also dismissed the allegation as implausible, noting that Mexican cartels avoid targeting U.S. law enforcement to prevent retaliation against the cartels. President Trump said Indian Prime Minister Modi personally assured him that India would stop buying Russian oil following U.S. tariff hikes on Indian imports to 50% in response to the purchases. That would be significant because Indian purchases of Russian oil account for an overwhelming chunk of the amount of oil that India purchases from abroad. And finally, Canadian parents of internationally adopted children are condemning a new Liberal government citizenship bill that would force adopted kids born abroad to provide a, quote, substantial connection to Canada before passing citizenship to their own children, calling the proposal discriminatory and in breach of international law. Folks, that's all the news right now. As always, if you want to support my work and allow me to continue doing some great exclusive reporting, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing today. And I will have much more this afternoon, so stay tuned. Hey folks, Aaron Parnas here. Thank you so much for watching The Parnas Perspective. Please consider subscribing to support our work as we grow this independent news media entity into something that rivals mainstream every single day. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.